Welcome to the Will Leitch Show. I am the aforementioned Will Leitch, and I thank you for spending part of your day with me. Today's show is about sports and politics. We've all reached the point where we can tell people who want us to stick to sports to screw off, right? The idea that you can separate politics and sports has always been an aim. There isn't a single aspect of sports, standing for the anthem, paying for tickets in a publicly financed stadium, making fun of that Papa John's idiot, that doesn't also double as a political act. And that was true before our president started tweeting about kneeling athletes and LeBron called him "you bum." Let's never forget that happened, by the way. Not only was this a great burn, but it actually shut Trump up. He hasn't talked about the NBA since. Politics and sports are inextricable, and anyone who says otherwise is kidding themselves. But can I say I do kind of get it? I do see the appeal. I covered the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland a couple years ago, and by the end of the week, during which I'd actually interviewed a guy wearing a "Hillary Clinton is a fat bitch" t-shirt with a button of Barack Obama eating a watermelon, I was hollowed out inside. I'd spent a week dealing with the ugliest people I had ever met and left a little worried, correctly as it turned out, that the country was about to be taken over by them. It was horrible. I wanted to get out of there and away from them as quickly as possible. So to clear my head and make me feel good about the world again, I went to a baseball game. Almost instantly, the grossness of the real world faded away. The world was no longer a monstrous and complex place. It was suddenly very simple. If my team wins, I am happy. If it loses, I am sad. I was able to invest all my emotions, screaming, booing, joy, anger, euphoria, a slight gassy sensation, about the perilous real world into a game that today I can't even remember who won or who even played. I was just able to put all of my worries and fears away and enjoy a game. And that's what sports is supposed to do, right? It make you forget about the troubles and complications of the real world and get your emotions out in a harmless, stakes-free way. It's no wonder people want to leave politics out of sports. Politics suck. The last thing I want to think of at a Cardinals game is to think of Kellyanne Conway. She's what I'm there to get away from. Seriously, she follows me everywhere. Is she behind me? Okay, I'm kidding myself, of course. Sports is run by money and politics, the same way that everything is run by money and politics. But I still think the illusion has some utility. Sports aren't really an escape from this nightmare world we all currently find ourselves in, but they might be as close as we can get. You can't keep politics out of sports, but I have to say, I do understand why you would try. Our guest today is the host of All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC, as well as the author of A Colony in the Nation, which is now out in paperback in bookstores everywhere. Please welcome Chris Hayes.
Hey,
sir.
how are you?
A pleasure. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you for having me.
By all means. So I have to ask you, because I dabbled briefly in political reporting and found it demoralizing, and I only did it for like 6 months. I know this is a sports show, and I know that you're a Cubs fan. I forgive you for that by letting me you coming on the show. How do you do it every day? And I don't mean that like politics politics is fascinating, like it's endlessly, obviously, but it does. I think for a lot of people, particularly now, it's kind of hard on the soul, right?
It is, yeah. There's a certain emotional investment that I think it's funny. There are people in my business I think who don't care about the outcomes of the things they cover, which I sort of, I don't know if I admire it as much as I just have a hard time relating to it, but also wonder what it would be like to cover something where you don't care about the outcome.
Do you think that's part of the problem, or do you subscribe to that theory or no?
I don't. I mean, I do care about the outcomes because I care about what happens as both as a citizen, as someone who cares about politics, who has a certain kind of worldview. So in that way, it's taxing. Like, I think it's a little bit like if you were covering a team that you were a diehard fan for, or just cared a lot about.
But see, I have always argued that it doesn't necessarily make you worse. I feel like some great sports bloggers have been really fantastic.
Yes, and
I find myself trusting them more because I know where they're coming from.
And that's funny because I feel like there's actually a parallel conversation in sports journalism precisely about that, right? About like the idea of objectivity, the idea that like no one claps in the in the booth because we're not fans, we're covering it. And then there's also a little bit of like weird fake self-deception to that because anyone who's ever listened to the local, like, I have NBA League Pass, right?
Of course.
So what you get to, one of the funniest things about League Pass is like a little window into like, well, who's calling the Bucks game? And it's like, whoa, wow, they are not objective.
This is not, yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, though, is that like I find myself not only trusting them more, but I find myself not believing people who claim like, why'd you get into sports in the first place? Like, obviously, you loved a team, you got excited about it, and I feel like politics is somewhat like that.
Yes,
too.
although
like you have to have, you're a human being, you have to have thoughts.
I think there are people who like politics as a kind of endeavor, spectacle, process distinct from having politics. I think those are like weirdly, like there's a certain kind of person you meet in DC who just really loves politics. And I would meet them sometimes like, oh, I worked for this person and then I worked for that person. And I would say, whoa, well, those are really different.
Those are diametrically
Those
opposed
are different
human
people.
beings,
Be like, yeah, well, it's sort of interesting. And it was like, there's a certain way of approaching it that is not the way that I approach it. All this a long-winded way of saying that like there is a certain emotional content to covering it day in, day out. But also I have to say that like to me it's also cathartic because I really feel like if I was sitting in some big law firm, if I'd gone to law school and I was now a lawyer in some big law firm, I'd just be sort of like screaming at my television set,
Slamming
or
the
like
door.
I would have like an anonymous Twitter account that was like extremely profane.
That HR would be constantly trying to find out.
No, they would not.
It's coming inside the house.
They would not know. And instead I have this outlet, so that's cathartic.
So, and do you find yourself, because obviously there's a constant news constantly happening at all times, but it's fine because talking about catharsis, one nice thing about covering sports is we can all talk about pregame, we can all talk big game tonight, we're going to see what happens, and here's what's motivating this guy. But eventually they play a game. Like there's actually an event that it leads to, and to me that was one of the issues with politics is at the end of it. I guess there's elections, but those are so rare, and it feels like a lot of times the conversation is just perpetual, like there's just never a game. It's just all
right.
pre-game.
And there's also something. I mean, the way that sports works, right? The action is concentrated for a reason. Right. I mean, meaning like the game is is time limited and everyone watches it, right?
Everything is pre-game and post-game in that
exactly
way.
Right. And that's just not the case in politics. I mean, that is the case. The one thing that is the case with, and get covered in a very sportsy way, are the quadrennial presidential elections, which really are covered like, it's like there's the...
Like Olympics, right.
Yeah, it's like the pregame and the game and the postgame, and it's like, oh, well, why did they... Right. And you see it, I say this all the time, like, the fights about what happened in 2016 are exactly like fights about causation in a sports game that was lost by a single bucket. Like, there was this stupid foul, but there shouldn't have been a stupid foul because they actually had 12 turnovers in the fourth quarter. And if they hadn't turned the ball over, and so it's exactly the same thing. Like, well, she didn't go to Michigan. Well, but also the Russians.
Right. And that technical foul shouldn't have been called. And,
plus the rest were like on the take, maybe. Or
why did that guy come in from the stands?
Yeah.
And I guess that's what it ultimately comes down to too. Is this is an argument against the idea of covering politics like sports, right? The idea that, like, at the end of the day, like, I can't actually affect a game. Like, I cannot actually, like, there's no way pre-game I can say, wow, LeBron I think he's going to struggle tonight, and it could possibly cause him to struggle. And I feel like that can happen in politics, right?
Well, there's that is very different, right? So there's like you can impact things, right?
Like the refs are not everywhere.
Right.
The refs are not constantly on television before the game.
Right. And you can also, so you can impact things. I mean, the biggest difference is that there's content to what
There's things that happen, right.
Like, it won't matter. Like, people will or won't get health care. Either one team wins or another team wins. And actually, that's the thing that I always find. I find that, I mean, I don't know, have you ever been a beat writer? Have you ever done that?
I did it very briefly and ran.
That to me is like, that is something I think about a lot because I'm a pretty diehard, like you said, I'm a Cubs fan and I'm a Chicago sports fan, even though I grew up in New York because I inherited it from my dad. Mm-hmm. And you come to know like the beat writers of the teams that you read.
You know the personalities.
And there's some, like the Bulls this year are terrible. Like, they're terrible. Right. And like just reading the nightly, just like the job of the BC of the beat reporter for the Tribune, just like going to 35 people after 30 minutes and being like, well, then they came out bad, and then they also had a pretty bad third quarter.
Right. And then at the end, woo.
Yeah, and I just think like that's sort of that the meaninglessness.
That's like
the grinding meaninglessness
it's like being a beat reporter for like an uncontested election.
Right, that's right. Or just where nothing. I mean, nothing. Even an uncontested election, like eventually they'll get in office and they could do stuff. But it's like, what is the meaning of this Bulls season? Like, I guess you find plot lines, you find young players. They have this great draft, first round draft pick who's Finnish, who's fun, whatever. But like, Yeah, I wonder what that mindset is. I have no subjective access to what it would be.
And that's like the general, I guess you almost have to just do it like the way, like, because obviously so many teams are tanking now. I guess you almost just have to be, you're not writing a beat for now. Every single story is Billy about something that's going to happen in 4 years.
I guess, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing
about. You're a futurist.
The other thing about sports is just a huge, like, I can think of no job that would be more fun, including my own, than being the beat writer of like the 2016 Cubs.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
when
you're in the moment that you're dealing with a team that is having a great run or really fun, or that incredible Warriors team, like the first year they came out. You know, that's one thing, but but most teams are not that, right? So like most teams, like the vast majority of what that is just like, yeah, we got our asses kicked together.
And I think this speaks to to close the point, I feel it kind of speaks to the idea that, like, I've seen beat reporters covering those teams, and they know that, like, hey, maybe there's a book in this offseason if they win. I live in Athens, Georgia. This just happened with the Georgia football team. All those beat reporters, they were not impartial as that season went along. And not because they're bad journalists, but it's just.
But
like,
you also get
it's fun.
become part of the hype too.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so I want to talk about the book, A Colony in the Nation. This is the paperback version. Yeah. It's funny because, like, this is one of the things that's really impressive about the book, and I think really hard for people to like. It's all about kind of like being honest about what this actually is, about the idea that there are two justice systems for white people and for black people. And there's it's funny, you take from a Nixon quote, the idea that from within the colony, that sort of idea.
Yeah, that, like there's a Nixon line in his 68 speech about not wanting to create a colony in a nation, which is sort of what we've created, and sort of twin, American justice systems that operate very differently. One of which, the nation, is the one that you would think we have with a constitutional system and rights protected and due process.
It's the one I totally thought we had for like the first 25 years of my life.
And I think, honestly, if you live in that world, there's a reason you think that.
Of course.
And then the other, which I call the colony, is where policing and the power of the state particularly looks a lot more like what you would expect in an occupied territory, you know? And I think, here's a sports example that I think is a great example of this. Thabo Sefolosha is outside a nightclub where his friend gets stabbed, the cops rolled up, and they end up injuring him. He didn't do anything wrong. They end up injuring him and taking him out of the playoffs.
Yeah, it was like literally right on the eve of the playoffs, that great Hawks team,
And it was just like, and there was very little, here's a guy, right? So here's a guy you think, like, this is a powerful person. This is a millionaire. This is an athlete.
This guy was
the playoffs. They just took him out of the playoffs.
And this guy was obviously not like holding up grandparents, like on the street.
No, he had not done anything.
He was literally just
in fact,
you couldn't even make an argument that he would be confused to doing something.
That's right. The only thing he'd done is come outside when his friend was getting stabbed outside a club. And, here's a guy who is sort of perfect example of someone who, the policing model, the way that this guy's being dealt with, is the model of the colony. Whereas you look at Harvey Weinstein, and when they go to the Manhattan DA and say that, and they can't make a case, he's getting a certain benefit of the doubt that Thabo did.
That's the idea, the benefit of the doubt, the notion that like in a default mode, and you actually kind of use the example from when you were at the Republican convention in 2000 of it as a good example of like you almost being a vivid example of those two different, of the colony and the larger state.
Yeah, I was 21 years old and going to the RNC with my then partner, now wife, who her father was covering it. Actually, he was a political reporter. And I happened to forget that I had a dime bag of weed in my eyeglass case, and the cop found it. And I panicked and thought I was going to be arrested. And ultimately, he let me go through, and I went inside the building. I looked, and it was still there. And what he had done is he'd given the benefit of the doubt, right? There's this sort of
sense he's a kid.
Right, or like, I don't know whose dad his father might be, and what's, and also this idea.
Because you're like 22, 23 at this
time?
Yeah,
I was like it was just like a scruffy kid, college student. Looked like a protester. People kept asking me and Kate, my wife, are you guys protesters? I was like, does it look that obvious? And it's that benefit of the doubt. You see that benefit of the doubt applied in all kinds of elite circles. I mean, you have the president of the United States who talks about law and order and illegals this and illegals that. When his own staff secretary is accused by two women of being an abuser, a violent abuse, including a photo of a black guy that he gave her by putting a vase into her face. The president tweets about like what a shame it is because he didn't get due process. It's like a mere allegation.
He's a good guy.
And it's like all of a sudden it's like, wow, due process in the hands of this realm, like endless due process, endless benefit of the doubt, endless empathy. On this other side of the line, zero. Like you're a thug.
So, and you've added, this has come out since, you've added a chapter about Trump.
Yeah, so there's like an afterword that's specifically about Trump because I think actually he's been very useful in kind of revealing what the phrase law and order means.
Right.
You know, here's a guy who ran on
There's
law
a
and order.
clarifying nature to him.
Extremely clarifying. You know, there's that Simpsons quote of when I think Homer says, I said the quiet part loud.
Yeah, right.
And it's like he is the, we always say that at the office, like always the quiet part loud.
Yeah, it's,
you know?
subtext is always text.
Subtext is always text. Like he gets asked, you know, why'd you nominate this congressman to be drug czar? And rather than say, well, he'll do a good job, he says, well, he's one of my earliest supporters. And it's like, right, yes.
Right, that is.
Usually that's implied.
Well, this is why there are no more. This has been why there's been nothing since the Lester Holt interview, right? Like the
Exactly
idea, like
why.
there's like that's the exact moment. That
Nor
he was
press
like,
conferences,
right.
nor like proper formal. You know, today he did a press conference and
kind of right,
sort of
yeah,
right. You know, he does these 2 and 2s, but no formal one where you know he gets a bunch of questions. And I think it's because they realize like he will give up the goods very quickly.
Yeah. So well, I think a lot of people have actually realized that
Yes.
when they talked to Trump over the last few years. Okay. So the book is A Colony, a Nation. We'll promote it some more as we finish it. But now you have to play a game with me. I've got a few games. Actually, this is not a game. This is the section we call frivolous questions of dubious import.
Okay.
Very simple questions. You can answer them as shortly, as quickly as you like.
Okay.
This is actually more of a philosophical question. Do you think, after working in politics and writing about this as long as you have, do you think that people at their core are fundamentally good or fundamentally bad?
Oh man.
Now, obviously, there's a question in the middle, but which way does the dial? From as much as an observer of human nature and of human politics, what would you say? They're not all this hard.
Yeah, I think the dial. I think I probably. You know, this is a horrible thing to say. I think I used to think more good, and now maybe think more bad.
Kind of hearing that myself these days.
I think.
Hard
I think it's. I think the proper answer is there's boundless capacity in both directions.
Okay, good.
That would be my answer.
Let's go with that. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I'm going to jump out the window. Okay, what percentage of white people in 30 years will claim that they were supporting Colin Kaepernick all along? This is the Muhammad Ali
80%.
idea. Yeah,
80%,
absolutely.
80%.
Yeah,
I mean, it really was funny when Ali died to see the
of course,
juxtaposition
of
of you know, the sort of sainted figure of Ali.
I've always thought too that the fact that he could not actually speak for the last part of his life actually allowed him to be the Santa Claus a little bit.
Totally.
The idea that like,
Absolutely.
oh well, because if he'd have been speaking all the time, lots of people probably would have not liked what he had to say. So, okay, now as we do before every show, we play the national anthem before the show. I noticed that you kneeled. Should I go watch the XFL? Is that what I should do now? I should go watch the XFL? That's what the XFL exists, right? To get rid of kneeling guests and the XFL version of the talk show.
It is really amazing how. It is amazing the potency of that particular cultural trope.
Yeah,
like it really.
Because I don't think the XFL is ever going to happen. I do not think it's actually going to exist. This is just McMahon having his moment to take advantage of this thing as a huckster as he always.
Yeah, it's like piggyback trolling.
Right, exactly. And
trolling off someone else.
I mean, we're all Gamergate and we're all in a wrestling plot line.
Constant.
I mean, it's really.
Yeah, that's our reality.
What were you saying about the good going to the dark end of the spectrum? Do you think it's better, as a Cubs fan, do you think it's better not to know the politics of your favorite athletes and your owners, or do you think it's better to know?
Oh gosh. I
don't mean
I
all
would actually
athletes.
make a distinction.
Okay.
I'd rather not know the athletes.
Right. Okay.
The owners are owners. I mean,
right.
I don't have any.
They're not doing anything.
Well, and also it's like there's no. I mean, there's a little bit of a bummer. There are certain things that the Ricketts family will do, and I'm like, ugh.
Right.
But it's like they're just the owners of the team, and like owners are owners.
Yeah.
You know, whether they own an aluminum factory or a baseball enterprise or a media company. The players is more like there was the Jake Arrieta.
I was going to mention the Jake Arrieta.
I'm on this thread with all my, you know, like I imagine you are with your fellow Cards fans. I'm on a thread with all these Cubs fans. Constant, you know, it's a constant barrage, and that was like a a.
Yeah, it's hard.
You know, because it was like a jerky thing to say, kind of like it was just a. It wasn't even like it wasn't even he was saying something like, you know, these are my views on abortion or something. Which I'd be like, okay,
Kennedy won.
Well, those are your positions, but it was just this
just
sort of jerky thing, and I thought,
no, he's about to be gone now.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think Donald Trump has ever watched a full sporting event start to finish?
Oh, that is a great question. No.
Yeah, I don't think there's no way. There's no way he's ever made.
I also think he's one of these people where I don't think. He doesn't strike me as someone who's actually super knowledgeable about sports. Like I
agree. Yeah.
I think he's got like
he knows winners.
Right, he knows winners, and he's got a certain kind of like guy at the end of the bar bluster.
Right.
But like
the choked like a dog thing, which is not always a sports thing.
Yeah.
But that's a very like talk radio caller type of thing to do.
Totally talk.
Right.
He is the ultimate talk radio caller.
Awesome.
He is He is
Leader of the free
first
world,
time,
yeah.
long time.
Leader of the free
First
world
time,
is
long
the- yeah.
time.
Leader of the
First
free
time
world is
president,
the-
long time listener.
He's the guy for the Patton Oswalt movie. That's nice to know. Okay, so Cardinals fans have been saying their entire lives that if the Cubs won the World Series,
Yes.
The world would end. And we obviously saw 5 days later. I think you actually have a little bit of, I think this is a famous tweet of yours, I think that got around.
Look how early
a
that
little
is,
bit.
by the way.
I know.
I just want to be clear.
Of course.
This is prior to opening day.
Yes.
This is prior to opening day.
I know. Listen, they were favored. That's not.
Okay.
But yes. But so I'm asking you, as a representative of Cubs fans, do you think that you guys have an apology to the rest of them? I think so, right? You do, yes. I take that as an apology.
No apology.
No apology. Fair enough.
Independent events. Unrelated and independent events.
Sure. As a Cubs fan, admit it, you're getting a little sick of Eddie Vedder. A little bit.
nope.
A little bit.
Love him.
A little
Love.
bit. You know,
I'm so into it.
He used to be into the Mariners. He used to be into the Red Sox.
No,
yeah.
I'm into it.
His Cubs song's not very good either. Okay, this is a more serious question.
I think it's decent.
It's decent. It's not, but yeah, go Cubs go. Every time I go to Wrigley Field, I hate the Cubs as much as I dislike anything in the world,
Right.
and that song will be in my head
Iconic
for weeks.
forever,
Yeah, will
yes.
be in my weeks forever.
My kids can sing it.
Yeah. Okay. General TV question. Does going on TV, you've not always been on television every single day. Does it change you at all? Have you found your personality, like your specific personality? Do you find yourself carrying yourself differently, walking around the street with strangers differently?
Yeah. I mean, one thing, it really changes your experience of public space.
Right.
Because you get recognized.
Right.
And for me, I think it's been fairly gradual, but
Yeah.
now
It's ramping up, right.
I've
right.
hosted a television show for 7 years now. So, people recognize you, and you start to navigate public space in a way that's different when you're anonymous. You interact with people sort of differently. Look,
Your friends notice? Like your longtime friends, have they noticed anything?
it's funny you say that. Most of the people in my life I'm closest to, I've been friends for
For
a
the
while.
get-go, right.
And I would they tell me no, but
They're like, no, yeah.
I do think, there's ways in which it can really, it messes with you. It does. It's, we are built as, our social aspect evolved in a very particular circumstance, which is like kinship relationships.
I'm talking to you, we are together.
Yeah,
in the
and
same-
we have relationships of mutuality. And the weirdness of fame or recognition
of them, of those people right
these
there.
people
Right.
out here,
Jerks.
is that they have a unilateral relationship to you, right? You and you meet people at a book signing or whatever. It's like they have this feeling about you. They know your verbal tics. They have a
Right.
connection, a relationship to you, and you don't with them. And the asymmetricness of that is a tough thing to sort of get your head around.
I find this with podcasts a lot. When I listen to podcasts a lot, I get their voice in my head.
Oh, and you get, that's even more
Yeah.
like intimate medium where you're.
Because I feel when they do a live show, I get upset because I'm like, no, you're just supposed to be talking to me.
Right,
You're supposed to be talking to me. Okay, so this is a question that apparently has to be asked on all talk shows now. Talking to you, I do smell alcohol on your breath. I feel like I need to say something. Okay, that's all.
I shouldn't laugh, actually, because it's like actually.
Oh, don't. The Axios thing was total like concern trolling. The idea.
It was you know what? It was concern trolling, and also like there was totally concern trolling, totally legitimate, newsworthy.
Right.
He is a grown person
who volunteered to go on
who's doing
television.
newsworthy things.
Right.
That said, like I just find there's just something about I don't know the guy's deal, and I don't know if he has a real substance problem. It seemed to me like he probably does. And so there's just something always about that feels tough. Right. I'm not saying like, they shouldn't have been done.
Right. Okay, just a few more. Should Kurt Schilling be in the Hall of Fame?
Man, he's such a borderline case. I mean, obviously you have to sort of bracket out.
Well, that's the thing. Not everybody, there have been studies that shown his vote totals in the last 3 years are actually going down because...
Right, because he's
Kurt Schilling.
a troll.
Right.
He's a troll.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing, right? The statistics, the difference between his playoff, like he's in the top of playoff performers,
right.
and postseason performers, and a
And
decent regular season starting pitcher.
On the top tier, right. And is that enough to push him over? That's the.
I think probably.
Yeah, I think it's probably there.
think.
Okay, do you ever go on the air with pink eye like Bob Costas? We do this on every show. It just kinda, it's weird. I felt awful for him, and he put like, to me, that shows the power of Bob Costas. That
Right.
like with that eye, they kept put like Costas, we're putting you out there even with that going.
Also,
on.
just like it was like a stress dream made real.
Yeah,
And like if you
it's
work in
terrifying,
television,
right,
just like, oh, it's the day of the biggest broadcast in the country and world.
yeah.
I mean, there's not a bigger broadcast than this, and I have this thing.
Yeah, it's a tough. Okay, last question. Before we have a game, but this
Okay.
last question. Are we going to be okay? Like, are we all going to be okay? Like, I feel like I need to ask you.
Yes.
You are versed
People
in this.
ask me that a lot.
Are we going to be okay?
I cannot guarantee it.
Awesome, thanks. I'm glad I asked. Okay, we're gonna play a quick game. Very simple. It's called news or fake news. Very simple. Fake
Great.
news or news.
I say whether
I'm going to give you a headline, and I'm going to give you a headline. You can let me know whether you think it is a real headline
okay.
or a fake headline, whether a real headline or part of the deep state conspiracy.
Okay.
Okay. First one: Mile High tug. Passenger strips naked and starts watching porn on his laptop on a busy passenger plane.
News.
That is correct. That is an easy one. That's it.
If you're ever in a public library.
Yeah, that's it. That happened on my way here today. Okay. Lego admits it made too many bricks.
Fake news.
That is actually true. That's actually a true headline from the BBC. I love the.
I don't even understand the context.
I know.
Like, what does that mean?
It feels like there would be an occupational hazard of being Lego. To feel like, might make too many bricks. That could happen. Maybe, I don't know. That's the actual line. Okay. Boston Dynamics crosses threshold with robot dentist.
No, that's fake news.
That is in fact fake news, part of the deep state conspiracy. Kentucky child marriage ban delayed after opposition from conservative group.
That is definitely news.
That one is very true.
That's on my radar screen.
Yeah, that is
and
true
that is
in
absolutely
many different ways. Every lawyer in Utah just received a picture of boobs.
also true from the State Bar Association.
Yeah, that is
Accidentally.
Yeah, of all states too. Like, didn't happen in like a more hedonistic place. Maryland church offers chance to win salvation and a car.
Sure, true, yeah.
That's correct. That's
Yeah,
not true. That's
yeah.
not true as well. It feels like a natural extension. New cancer study extols virtues of public transit.
Fake news.
Fake news. That's correct.
Yes.
Fake news, part of the deep
Crushing
state
it.
conspiracy. Archaeologists discover prehistoric Facebook.
This is going to be a real news story, but like a lame one.
So you're going real?
Yes.
That is in fact fake. That is
Oh,
in fact a
okay,
fake
okay.
news story.
I thought it was
That's
going to be
a-
like,
yeah.
sometimes they have these massively extrapolated.
Right, yeah. Like
little
two
piece
pieces
of
behind-
vase.
yeah,
Yes,
little
exactly.
hieroglyphics
Yeah.
thing. Okay, last one. Dad measures baby's growth with cheesesteaks.
Real news.
Oh, that is, I think I've done that, actually. I did that. That's great. Okay, last thing we do a very quick 20-second game called How Fast Can You Say Things on the Show That You're On with Will Right Now?
Okay.
Very simple.
I repeat after you.
No, it's like outbursts played very quickly.
Oh, okay.
Like it's basically outbursts.
All
It's
right.
basically outbursts.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a category of 10, and you say them as quickly as you can. The correct answers.
Okay.
The last 10 people to win the Iowa caucuses. The last 10 people to win the Iowa caucuses. I'll give you a start point so you don't get screwed up. 1996 is the start date for this.
Okay.
To help you out. We're going to put 20 seconds on the clock. That's right. 20 seconds. Okay. 20 seconds on the clock. Go.
Okay. Bill Clinton
Yes.
wins in 96 for the Democrats. I don't think Bob Dole wins in 96.
Bob Dole. Bob Dole's correct.
Okay. 2000.
10 seconds.
John Kerry
Yes.
does win. And John Kerry in 2004.
Time. Sorry, that's in 20 seconds. That's the idea.
fast.
Yeah, two count.
I missed Al Gore.
Al Gore, that's correct.
I missed Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, yes.
I missed Barack Obama.
Correct.
I missed McCain didn't win. Who won? Huckabee won
Huckabee won, yes.
that year. I missed two more, right?
Two more, three more.
Three more. 04. Well, George W. Bush.
George W. Bush, you have two more. One is the spouse of someone that you've said.
Oh, Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Wins
And the last one is my favorite one. Here's my favorite part about this. He also ran, when I was covering the election last year, he also ran in 2016. After winning in 2012, he was like 15th in 2016. And I went
Huckabee.
No, it's Huckabee. 2012, he won in 2012. And then in 2016, he ran again, was in like 15th place. And he held a public event at a all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. And I realized there's a fine line between a rally and bothering people when they're trying to eat lunch.
Wait, who won in 2012?
I give you it. His name was briefly before it was Google search down.
Santorum.
Rick Santorum. That's correct. Rick Santorum.
I forgot.
Yeah,
I forgot he won in 2012.
And I think it's still up in the air, right? Because I think Romney later claimed that it was close. And
that's what it was.
Yeah,
it went all the way late into the night, and they were
so
essentially.
Santorum just did. All right. So the book is A Colony in the Nation. Colony in the Nation, out in paperback, bookstores everywhere. Chris Hayes, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, man. This was great.
It was very much an
Appreciate
honor.
it. Thanks a
Okay,
lot.
we will be back with our next show with a much less fun guest than Chris Hayes. Enjoy this and all of your rest of SI programming, and perhaps watch this show again. It would make me feel better.